Love that. Music is so important. So is aesthetics. Isn't this, I was just sitting here, isn't that gorgeous? Thank you, Diane Poller. And Peggy Berger with the poinsettias. Where is the light? So we've been in the question all month because we allow that rejuvenating energy to allow ourselves to hear and see things in a new way when we stay in the question, rather than just repeat what we already know. So the question for this week is, where is the light? And I hope you all have been asking that and wondering that and getting your own answers and your own insights and revelations. And sometimes we get distracted and chat after service, but I've heard online you've had some pretty wonderful conversations about these. So thank you for being in the inquiry and sharing your insights with one another. I'm going to share a story because I'm writing a blog on it this week, so it's fresh in my mind. It's about when I was working in a psychiatric hospital, a woman came in, and she had been, well, when I came in for my shift, I was asked to go sit with her. She had come in the night before. She had been brought in. She was on suicide watch. She had been put in a quiet room where she could be safe. There was nothing but a mattress. And by the time my shift started, they felt safe enough to put her in a room, and yet she wouldn't get out of bed or open the curtains or go to therapy or take medication. And so they were still worried about her and asked if I would go sit with her. So I went in and sat with her, and she was just lying on bed and just done. And I was suggesting that maybe she'd want to go to a therapy group, and she said no. She said, I've been here 3 times. I have done everything. I've been to all the therapy groups. I've taken all the medication. Nothing works. And I'm done. I don't want to live. I can't seem to get out of it, and nothing anyone ever does can help me. Have you ever felt that way? So as she was sharing that, I felt that pain, that suffering, that hopelessness. And isn't that what depression is we get to a place of just utter hopelessness. And I knew there was nothing for me really to say to her other than to say, I understand. You know, I was at that point once in my life where I felt hopeless. You know, I'd done everything just similar to you. I've done therapy. I know these principles. I was a New Thought at the time. I know these principles, but nothing was touching it. Nothing was giving me hope. And so finally, there was nothing left for me to do but to just surrender everything over to God, just to let everything go, and just make that commitment to put God first in my life. And as I sat in this chair, I just kept talking about this time in my life of surrendering my life. But what happened was that as I was speaking, I was suddenly outside my body, and the words were coming through my mouth, but suddenly the entire room was just swirling in this light energy. It was just everything, including me, including her, the bed, the chair that I was sitting on, the floor, the wall. There was nothing solid in the room anymore. It was just radiant, powerful, swirling light. And then the person sitting in the chair, me, I was still talking. You know, the words were coming out, but the light so far surpassed it. But there was a moment where I knew that it was done. It was complete. I stopped talking, I got up, and I walked out of the room. And they had put her roommate across from the nursing station because they were concerned about her. And so I went into the nursing station, and I'm doing paperwork. And about 10 minutes later, she opens the door to her room. She's opened the curtains. She's gotten fully dressed. She has makeup on and her shirt. She's just smiling. She goes, where's my next therapy group? And I just point her in the right direction, and off she goes. It was so natural. The thing about this light, I wasn't thinking, oh my gosh, this was just an incredible experience. It was the most natural thing. Of course she's fine. In that moment, I never worried about her again. I never thought, oh, is she going to be okay? I knew that I knew that I knew. And that's this thing about light. It's the most normal thing ever. So what we know, what you heard in the reading today, and what we know from so many mystics and from your own experiences and from learning principles, is that this light is everywhere all of the time. It doesn't come, it doesn't go. So right now we are immersed in this powerful swirling light that's more real than our human lives. It's more real than the solidity of the stage or the chairs that you're sitting on or the computer you're looking through. It is, and it's right now. It's here. So the question is where is it? Why can't we see it or experience it No, I didn't. The question was where. It's here. And it's swirling. So I want to first say is how natural this is. I've had so many conversations with people who say, I haven't had spiritual experiences. But if I keep poking at them, they'll start to say, well, I had this experience. Like I remember this one person I was sharing, she was adamant she hadn't had an experience. But the more I kept, she's like, well, I did have this experience while I was walking the dog. And it was extraordinary experience. It was beautiful. But the reason why it didn't immediately come to her mind is because it was so normal. When I tell a story like that about this woman being healed, it feels so extraordinary. It feels like, it is awe-inspiring, yes, but at the same time, when it's happening, it's utterly normal. So we're not necessarily recognizing I'm having this extraordinary mystical experience. It's like, this is me. This is who I really am. So people don't often remember, or they remember, they always remember it, but they don't qualify it because we think it's something other. We think it's something other than what we already are. But in fact, this experience of light is who we are, and it's the most natural thing in the world. And so what we want to do is to open up to its naturalness. I love, I've shared before about my experience with baby Jesus becoming light. And that was my first experience. And I was thinking about what my next experience of light was. So that was a big mystical, Jesus and infant Christ and all that. But my next experience of light was I just wanted to make the basketball team. I was in 8th grade, praying and praying to make the team, and I'm at the tryouts, and suddenly I'm in the light, I'm shooting baskets. The most mundane, ordinary life experience that millions of children are having every day, because light doesn't say, well, this is important and this isn't. It's always there in the most mundane things. It doesn't have to be this huge thing. The person who said they couldn't remember, they were just walking their dog. It doesn't have to be an extraordinary thing. When we're opening ourselves, what happened was I was open. I was praying and praying, and then I was just allowing that light to come in. But it's here right now, where it's always available. So this morning, I'm going to talk about 4 ways to access that light and to be the light. Thanks. So the first way is just to be the light, to recognize that there is light that is in, through, and as all life. As we heard again in the reading today, Ernest Holmes saying that he often just sits in the silence for 2 hours contemplating the presence and the power of light. That the quieter and the quieter we become, the more possible it is to access the light. Sometimes we're so busy, and what are we busy with? We're busy with the external stimuli. The external stimuli is all the effect of the light, but when we get quieter, we're going to the source of the light. So by getting quieter, we had a 2-hour silent meditation last night. We did it in the sanctuary, which, by the way, was just stunning. I guess I never really took in how beautiful the sanctuary is at St. Bart's. And so there were 7 of us, and it was just lovely just to get, and as the evening went on, we get quieter and quieter and stiller and having that collective consciousness. So, and we're going to do that. We're going to have a 2-hour silent meditation every 3rd Saturday. Probably, I don't know if they'll let us use that all the time, but we'll do it here if we can't do it there. Just to start getting used to being still collectively. We can do it on our own. Ernest Holmes was doing it on our own. But at the same time, it's wonderful to get that support. But another way, another way to continue to see and open to this light is to recognize that it's always there and to be activating it with our mind. So when we are using our imagination to imagine light, we're actually not making something up. See, imagination is like we're making something up that isn't there. Light is always there. So when we're using our imagination, we're actually using our imagination to align ourselves with the truth that already exists. And I was thinking about a woman at the Unity of Tri-Valley where I used to be a minister, and I just realized, amazingly enough, her name was Jerry too, except she spelled a little bit differently, but the same Jerry with wisdom. I don't know, name your kids Jerry, they end up very wise. So she had a practice of just seeing, she said, I wrap people in light. So when she sees somebody, and especially if they're ill or out of alignment or out of harmony, she goes, I start with the bottom of their feet, and I just first of all, it goes, first I see them, I put light all through their body, to the crown of their crown, and then all the way down. So first they're full of light, and then I wrap. I wrap the light around them, all around them, all around, light. She goes, and so they're so fully immersed in light, in my consciousness. And it's amazing how many healings happen. What an extraordinary practice. And so I actually took that practice, and I just use it all the time. Well, I already had it, but I didn't do it as intentionally as she did. I just would see something in light. But just the wrapping, just that act, is very activating, this energy. So I do it for anything that I feel like needs protection, people that need protection, things that I feel like need. Oh, did I lock the car? I just wrap it in light. Light. It's in the midst of light. Anything, there's mundane, big, wrapping it in light, because what we're doing is we're aligning ourselves with a light that already exists. So this is how we start activating that vibration of light in our life. When I journal with Jesus, I see us both in light. I don't separate. I don't say he's in the light or I'm in the light, but I make sure I'm activating the light. So when I'm journaling the papers in the light, the pens in the light, the tables in the light, the chairs in the light. Everything's immersed in light, and that just changes the entire activity of journaling. Because now it's not just journaling in the duality and the density of this world. It's raising the vibration in that journaling process. And so what happens is we just start to practice being the light, seeing the light. And of course, we do it for ourselves. We always heal ourselves, wrap ourselves in light every time we feel out of alignment. Just wrap ourselves in the light. The more we're doing this and make this an active practice in our life, we are going to start noticing our vibration changing. For anyone who's read Testimony of Light, if you haven't read it, put that on your 2022 to-do list. It's a wonderful book about the other side of the veil. And what I love about it, there's cool stories and it's a wonderful book, but I read it enough just to see the trajectory that because I remember how I ended it and I start reading it again, I'm like, no, this is dense, I don't remember this. But that's because it progresses. As you read the book, it starts kind of dense, and then she's talking about being in the light and being in all these stories that she has, and as she's learning these various things, she's becoming lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. And by the end of the book, the vibration of the book, you're like, that's such a great book because you're in the light. And you've been immersed in the light with her. So as she's growing in the light, as a reader, as a receiver of that energy, you're raising in light. And what it is you're just reading a book. Nothing's changed. You're just reading a book, but you're reading a book about light. So what happens, this light is real. We're not making it up. It's already there. So when our thoughts start to become more light-oriented, our speech starts to become more light-oriented, our body starts to be light-oriented, the people whom we see become light-oriented, those people we don't like, those people we do like, we're wrapping them in light. Enemies, we're wrapping them in light. Objects, things that are giving us trouble, things that we've lost, anything, we just continue to wrap things in light, we're going to start noticing a different vibrational frequency. Now, one of the things that Yogananda talked about, I was going to talk about this later in the talk, but I'll do it right now. I was thinking, where does this go? It's going here because I'm remembering it now. He talked about, I love this, that God is like 1,000 watts and we're like a 10-watt bulb. And so our job is to continue to increase our ability to receive the light. He said if God gave us all the light, we would shatter, we would come apart. What I love about, I'm going to talk about this later, so just remember this. I remember where I knew there was something. Okay, so we'll come back to that at the end. So remember that. What our job is to continue to expand and how much light we can receive and radiate. Receive and radiate, this vibration of light. So we want to be the light, that's first. Second, be humble. We are on a journey. And it is a journey where all of us, every single one of us, is still basically children. We're so young on this spiritual journey. I think one of the things that I love about the image of the infant Christ is its innocence, that the fullness of light is in a little child, and that we get to be like little children, to constantly learn, and we learn from one another. We don't have to always learn from spiritual people. We learn, I just remember, I was just thinking of a friend of mine who, when she got married, when they were engaged, in the group that she was in, they had a process, so people who'd been married longer, like 20 years and more, would mentor. They got to pick out a couple that inspired them, and that the older couple would mentor the younger couple. When they got engaged, they'd start the mentoring process and become their mentors for life, and then it would get passed down. I'm like, what a great idea. I love that, getting the wisdom of the elders as you're beginning your journey in marriage. So we're always this process of learning. I remember Yogananda talked a lot about opening to the light through the third eye, and I was going to these meditations at the temple, and you always get something. You can't sit for 2 hours and not get something. And I've had my third eye open just by grace, but not because I was trying. But anytime I was at these things, they never opened. And one time I was with a guy who, sitting next to him, and he was a martial arts guy, and he was really good at being focused. Like when he focused in, so I was sitting next to him, and as I'm going in the same, suddenly, just totally opened in light. He was being my teacher. I was learning from him. He wasn't intentionally teaching me, but simply by sitting next to someone who had mastered focus, concentration far more than I had, I learned. There are so many people from us to learn from. Children. We learn from children, we learn from friends, we learn from people who don't even know they're teaching us. When we start seeing the light everywhere, we start seeing those lessons everywhere we go. And I think, especially being on the spiritual journey, it's really important for us to be humble and learn from others who are more spiritually advanced than we are. And I was thinking about this recently, because I remember as a kid, even you probably have heard when I talk about my father, it's so adoring, and he's like the most intelligent man that ever lived. And so I was crushed to find out he wasn't. And those horrifying moments as a daughter. Wait a minute, there's people smarter than you? And he actually really wanted me to understand this. And I've really, it's helped me in the spiritual world. So I'm going to use it in his world and the basketball world too, because sometimes sports, because it's physical, is easier to understand, and then we'll apply it to the spiritual world. He was explaining to me about the bell curve. So the bell curve are people who are not very good at something, and then you go up the bell curve, and the bell part is where everybody basically is average. This is where most people hang out. That's the basic vibration. And then as you begin to get a little bit better, you start to pull away from the crowd, right? You're going down, you pull away from the crowd, and then you get down here, and now you're really down. So now at the other end of the bell curve, you're really pulling away. And then there's those few that are exceptional. So my dad was on the Harvard Law Review, which is the top 10 in Harvard Law School, and he was number 5. And that's when I realized, well, why weren't you number 1? And he said, when you get to a certain place, he said, what happens when you get to the bottom of this bell curve, and this is important for us to get, he said, the space between is so vast. He said, it wasn't even close. Be humble always. He said, between me at 5 and number 1, it wasn't even close. And when you get there, you start to realize it's not even close. And I think of basketball, same thing. Millions of kids all over the country are playing. And it's so awesome, and it's wonderful that all these kids play. And then at high school, it dwindles. And then you get to who can play in college. Well, I didn't know this, but it's actually kind of hard to play sports in college. Intramurally you can play, but to play a college sport, so now you're beginning to pull away from the pack. You have the bell curve, which is sort of everybody, and then you get to college, you're sort of pulling away from the pack. And then you get to professional sports. Well, to go from college sports to professional sports, you got to be, this is an elite crowd who are now down here. They have now completely separated themselves. People are professional, amazing. And then, even among this very elite crowd, you get the Steph Curry, who just beat some record this past week. 3-point shots, I think. And then you have Michael Jordan. Every professional basketball player knows how, so it's not just the average person who gets how good Michael Jordan is. Those people who he would even consider his colleagues, he's way better than. And remember, my dad was saying that it's a big space in between them. So as we're on this spiritual journey, lots of people are on this spiritual journey. We're in a huge crowd of people, and it's wonderful. I love being on the spiritual journey. And actually, all these people are on a spiritual journey too, and everybody has something to teach. So it's not about better than, it's just recognizing where we are on the path. And then if you're really committed and it becomes your life and it's a calling and you give yourself all the time to your prayer work and you start pulling away from just the average. This is just sort of something it's part of my life along with a lot of other things. It becomes like the central thing, just like in college players. If you're playing on college sports, it becomes central, especially if you're in a Division I school. It's a central thing. It's not just you're not doing it intramurally. You're doing it because this is your passion. You think, you drink, you eat, sleep, sports. You think, you drink, you eat, God, spiritual life. So that you start pulling away. And then, so I put myself in that pack. And that would be where I would see myself. But then even amongst those people, there becomes the really exceptional people. We know who they are. We can see them, amazing spiritual teachers that are even further along there. It's not that they're just professional, they're extraordinary. But then there's the even greater ones, the Michael Jordan of spirituality. Someone like a Paramahansa Yogananda, someone like a Jesus Christ, someone like a Buddha. They are extraordinary, and the space between us is huge. So much, and we thought we'd say we're just like them. No, we're not. Be humble. You know, I remember when I read Autobiography of a Yogi, which is by Yogananda, back in 1990s, and I was re-looking at it recently. My understanding of it, my depth of seeing things that I never saw then has so expanded. It's like I'm another person reading the same book. Because I have evolved, and I appreciate and I feel grateful for the evolution that I've been to in the last 30 years so that I understand more of what he's talking about. And what it's done is it hasn't made me less appreciative of him. It's made me more in awe of him. The more I have grown, the more I see how extraordinary and masterful he is and how far away I am from him. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in more in awe. I'm more humbled. I'm more willing to learn than I've ever been because I don't have that arrogance that's been dropping away slowly, and want to see a true master and what that means and what that looks like. So as we're on this spiritual journey, may we have the humility to learn from everybody. Everyone's our teacher. But to also recognize there have been spiritual masters on this journey who are not like us. They are like us because we couldn't learn from them if they weren't like us. And they had so much to teach, but at the same time, they are vibrating and acting from such a high place that we can't even, it's like me watching a football game next to Julian. He's seeing so much more than I'm seeing because he plays football. If we're watching a football game with a professional football player, they're watching a whole different game than I'm watching. It's the same thing spiritually. These are spiritual masters. We can't even see how amazing they are because we are not developed enough to see it. So there takes a certain level of humility and trust. There was a great quote by Fyodor Dostoevsky that says, if you're unable to, for those who are unable to bow to anything, they cannot bear the burden of being themselves. That's a beautiful quote. We can't bow to anything. We can't bear the burden of being ourselves. There's something beautiful in being able to bow and to learn and to be humble. So even when I'm journaling with Jesus and we're both in the light and we're swirling in the light, I am not coming to Jesus as his equal. I'm coming to Jesus. Even though we're both in the light, I'm coming to learn, to open myself, to be healed. This light always heals. This light always heals. This light always heals. And I every day come to be in that healing light and healing energy. Be the light, be humble, be brave. There's this extraordinary paradox that the more we become one with this light, immersed in the light, we actually become less like everybody else. We don't have to make ourselves be unique. We don't have to make ourselves be original. It's an automatic expression of spirit as us. So just all we have to do is immerse ourselves in the light, and that uniqueness starts to show up. And so if what we want to do is to blend in, like a lighthouse doesn't blend in, right? A lighthouse is its own thing. We need everyone to be a lighthouse. We need you to be you. And so it is needed. For you to, but it's going to be uncomfortable if what you want to do is not be seen, or you want to fit in, if you want to look like everybody else. And in fact, what happens is we actually create more disharmony by not being ourselves, by not being this unique self, by not being this original self. We're creating waves of dis-ease, disharmony, disingenuity. So by immersing ourselves in light, learning from that light, we become more light, unique, and expressed. People will start noticing you. People, without you even trying, will start asking you questions, learning, or just feeling your vibe. And sometimes people won't like what they feel because it's different, and people aren't used to that sometimes. You can either constrict, pull it in, I can't be that. And as soon as you do that, we start to create problems for ourselves, because now the light doesn't have a vehicle to shine through. You've said yes, you've allowed it, but then you start feeling your differences. It feels out of harmony. It feels out of sync. It can, but if we continue to be brave, if we continue to stand in that light, we continue to just stand in that truth, what we will find is that even though it might be uncomfortable or unfamiliar, we'll start to create it'll start to create harmony. That people will actually find that they like being around you even though you're different, even though you might have a different perspective. But that's not going to happen if you don't have the courage and the bravery to be who you are. You know, we talk a lot about this. Be your own person, follow your own path, as if it's some easy thing to do. So when I'm saying be brave, it seems so simple. You know, I've been on this very specific journey most of my life, and it doesn't fit in. You know, I don't really fit in anywhere. And I've often longed and looked at people who do fit in. I'm like, oh, that must be so nice just to say, this is what I agree with everybody else around me, and it's wonderful. I would not choose any other way to be than the way I am. But it takes courageousness, and it takes bravery, but it also is incredibly fulfilling and empowering, because that light cannot heal inwardly or outwardly if we're trying to fit in with everybody else, if who we are somehow stands out as different. And that could be in any capacity, and I know many of you know it within your own families. You feel different than, I've heard this a lot, you feel different than the other people in your family. With people at work, your work life, you feel different than the people in your work life. You feel different, perhaps, than community. I mean, you might feel different just being in this world. I hear this a lot, actually. I'm different than everybody. People say that, and yes, they are different, but we all are. The more we connect with that light, the more unique we become. And what we have to realize is the greatest way to fit in is to not fit in. The greatest way to belong and be in harmony is to not belong, because by being that person, we actually are in a harmony that is so much greater than the eyes can see and the ears can hear. Be the light, be humble, and be brave. And the last one is to be loved. And this gets back to the light bulbs. I knew it was. So we have the 1,000-watt bulb energy trying to get into a 10-watt bulb. So that was the imagery that Yogananda used. And so we want to create our volts so we can handle 50 volts, 75 volts, become a greater and greater vehicle. But I love that today we have different colors of light bulbs. So we have the white light, we have the warm, right? We have the warm light. And everyone has different preferences. And it's interesting, just this past week, I was reading in one of Yogananda's books that all light is not the same, which I never really, until he was really breaking it down, I have had different experiences, but I hadn't really thought about it. I was just sort of putting light all in the same category. But there's different vibrations of even light. And what I've discovered for myself is I love warm light. Because what I've come to, and I'm just going to say, for me, it mirrors how I see the divine, which is warmth. It's like that Corinthians Bible verse, that you can have everything else, but without love, it's nothing. And I've discovered that I can be around people with light, but sometimes that light can feel a little harsh, or that light can be so bright, but it doesn't have that softness and that warmth. And for me, without that love, it doesn't mean anything. And it's hard to be in that softness and this gentle if we are not allowing ourselves to be loved, to take in and to receive love. We're in the darkest time of the year. There's a lot of imagery around dark and light, but we want to remember the positive around the dark. Because the dark represents the unfamiliar, the mystery. And when we allow ourselves to remember that the dark also represents the womb of creation, that it's nurturing, that it's loving, that it's infinitely creative, that whatever's going to be birthed in the spring is going to start in the seed of the darkness of the womb. And that's where we are right now. And we open ourselves to feel whether when we're in the darkness, we can either see this as scary and full of monsters, or we can see it as incredibly loving and nurturing and the infinite possibilities to soften our heart, to let ourselves be loved. And then in Julian of Norwich, she talks about Christ as the mother. So we have Christ as the infant child, but Christ is the mother. And I've always loved that. I thought she was so ahead of her time in the 1300s to be talking about Christ as the mother. And I love it conceptually, but that was sort of as far as it went. Last night in meditation, I suddenly had this image of, I still don't fully understand it. I probably shouldn't talk about it yet, because sometimes when you talk about it, don't let it develop, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. Suddenly there was the Jesus on the cross, but he came off the cross and he held a baby in his arms. And it was so full of tenderness and warmth. And I thought, this is Christ as the mother. This presence of tenderness and warmth and love. And what I found in the meditation is my throat started getting really sore, because there was a part of me that wasn't fully allowing that softness to come in. And so that's be humble. Oh, that's deepening work to let even more love in. I haven't let fully that tenderness, fully that softness in. And so we're on a journey of being the light, of being humble and being brave. But even when we're shining the light, and even when we're being brave, we all need love. We all are these tender little infants that need to be held and cared for and nurtured and supported, no matter how much light we're shining, no matter where we feel on our journey, to allow that tenderness to be given to us. And that Christ light that is shining through us is also that thing that's taking care of us, that's nurturing us and holding us. Can we let it in? And so as we are in this season of light, as we are in this wonderful lighthouse, where in essence, to be a member of the lighthouse, you are committing to be the light. It's your membership donation, as I'm committed to being the light. And that we are here to be the light by practicing being the light, seeing the light, feeling the light. We are here to be the light being humble, being open and gracious and willing to learn, always to trust this light presence to guide us and protect us in that learning process. We are here to be the light and be brave, to stand tall as a lighthouse and shine our light out uniquely, like two lighthouses are the same, to shine and to be seen and to stand on our own 2 feet. And as all of that, as beautiful lighthouses, we are here to be loved and nurtured and cared for, and love and nurture and care for one another. Let us all be the lighthouse as never before as we move into 2022. And allow this Christ healing light to heal us on every level and dimension of our being. Let's pray. So I invite us as we're going into prayer to just consciously recognize that right here and right now, right here, wherever you are, right here, right now, not in the future, not in 10 minutes, not yesterday, but right now is all the light that has ever been. This light is swirling all around us, through us, and as us. We are not creating this light. We are not making it up. It is already there, and it is our natural expression of being is light, light, and more light. Let there be light. Let us be humble. Let us be brave. Let us be loved. We open ourselves to feel and know this light as never before. We allow this light to animate and become conscious in our aware in our thoughts, conscious as our emotions, conscious as our body. We allow this light to heal itself as us, this Christ healing light, healing and returning us over and over, breath by breath and moment by moment, to our natural and true self as pure beings of light and of love, of grace, as freedom, as kindness, as generosity, as abundance, as beauty. This light is who and what we are right here and right now. We stand in the absolute truth of this. We let go into this truth. We let go into this truth. We let go into this light. We trust this light. We give ourselves to this light. We say yes to this light. Even now, in this moment, we don't hold anything back. We don't hold anything back. We hold our fears, we turn it over to the light. Any attachments, we turn it over to the light. Anything we're holding on to, we turn over to the light. Anything we don't understand, we turn over to the light. We allow that light to immerse us on every level and dimension of our being. We stand in the power of cultivating this truth, one light, one love, one light, one love. We say yes, we wrap ourselves, we wrap one another, we wrap this planet in pure, infinite, unlimited light. We wrap the cosmos in infinite, oceanic light without end, without beginning, and we see all creation, multi-dimensions of time and space as light, light, and more light, and it is here that we find our home. It is here that we are healed. It is here that we find joy that is without limit, this deep and abiding love that is so personal and so intimate to each and every one of us specifically, that even as we are in the vastness of light, we feel the intimacy of this loving light, tender and compassionate and kind and soft and gentle, caressing and embracing each and every one of us just as we are in this moment. And we allow ourselves to be loved and cared for and nurtured and held with every breath. We belong, we belong, we belong. And so we give thanks. We give thanks for this light that is responding to our deepest heart's desires. We give thanks for our heart itself, our ability to love. We give thanks for our humility, and we give thanks for our bravery. And in deep abiding joy and everlasting peace, we just let all of it be. We let the light be. We let the humility be. We let ourselves be brave, and we let ourselves be loved. We let it be. In deep abiding rest, we let it be, and so it is. Amen. Amen.